Here's the deal, Ubisoft are killing a whole bunch of games, and the fun story is at least one of their developers isn't going to let them. It's actually pretty cool. So, to dive into this story, on the 1st of September 2022, Ubisoft are going to be decommissioning 15 titles, right? So they're taking out the online functionality, but it will actually kill one game entirely because it's multiplayer only, and that game came out in 2019. That's 3 years ago, so that's quite shocking. Now, they did say closing our online services for some older games allows us to focus our resources on delivering great experiences for players who are playing the newer or more popular titles. And that's, like, largely true, literally, but I think the issue that people have is obviously the principle, and very much that it's not like people can go and run a fan server readily for a bunch of these games.
Yeah, I think that's where the problem fundamentally is. It's just, oh yeah, the games you bought, you wanted to have the online services and play them. Sorry, too bad. And they're the ones making that call without anything to it. Just, yeah. Sorry, goodbye.
Now, most of these titles are like 10 years old, in some cases at least 10 years old. They are in series that have got successors, right? But also some of them do have re-releases on other platforms that are a bit more modern.
Yeah.
Which is also, like, a bit tricky.
Yeah, because you have to, you want to continue playing, I guess, Assassin's Creed 3 multiplayer or something? Then buy it again. Very good. But I bought it the first time. Why do I have to buy it again to have the feature that I paid for? Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's weird. So, to go through the games, and we'll start with the game where the devs have actually basically said no to this situation. It is Anno 2070, one of the more futuristic Annos, I suppose. So this came out 2011 on the PC, and you'll be unable to do multiplayer, link your Ubisoft accounts, or use the online features. But the developers are actually really quite angry about that, and we're going to cover that soon. The other games: Assassin's Creed 2, PC, PS3. Assassin's Creed 3, PC. The 2012 release. And then I just got confused by the table, I'm stupid. Assassin's Creed 3 on PC, PS3, Wii U, for the 3 people who are still using that thing, and the 360, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood multiplayer, Assassin's Creed Liberation HD, which came out in 2014, Assassin's Creed Revelations, Driver San Francisco, Far Cry 3, Ghost Recon Future Soldier, where to play the campaign in solo, you're going to have to set your console into offline mode, so that's really quite bizarre. Prince of Persia, The Forgotten Sands, Rayman Legends, Silent Hunter 5, Space Junkies, which is a Oculus and Vive game in PC that is just dead, gone, came out in 2019. Splinter Cell Blacklist, that's also going out. So is Zombie U, a game that I think was definitely held back by it being on the Wii U, just in terms of like how many people actually picked it up. But I actually heard pretty decent things about Zombie U at the time.
Yeah, even to this day, I've heard it's one of the better games that's on the Wii U.
Yeah.
But I guess that doesn't matter anymore.
Now, if you've bought DLC for these games, you've got to download them before the 1st of September. So definitely do that. And then, make sure they're backed up or whatever, because you ain't going to get them any other way. Now, with Space Junkies, that's a bit more egregious because the game's actually currently on sale. You can get it for 75% off.
Still.
It will be indefinitely destroyed. Completely destroyed this September. But they're still selling it. That's bizarre. Maybe an oversight, definitely a bad look.
Yeah. I was also thinking, Splinter Cell Blacklist's on there. That's the newest Splinter Cell game. That's the last Splinter Cell game they made. And there's like, yeah, sorry, it's too old. Goodbye. I also noticed that a lot of these were 360 games. And you think about what Microsoft are doing with the 360 era and going, look at this. We have backwards compatibility. This is a pretty big selling point of what we're doing. All of that library will be good to you. And now there's like, but some features may be disabled based on what the publisher thinks, and if they're willing to keep some servers alive. Let's not think about that at all whatsoever. Okay.
Yeah, so that's certainly something. Now, for the bright side here, we've got to talk about the developers, because the people behind Anno, who are actually an internal Ubisoft studio, which, because, like, if this was a game published by Ubisoft but somebody else did it, you kind of understand a studio saying, nah, it's fine, we'll foot the bill and cover it. You'd understand that, but this is actually an Ubisoft-owned studio, so they've published a statement on the Anno website where they're outlining their response here, saying that They're informing you that Ubisoft have decided to decommission the online services. That said, we have decided to dedicate some of our development resources to work on upgrading Anno 2070's aged online service infrastructure to a new system so the features can continue to be used past the mentioned date. They did say, though, that they cannot guarantee they'll be able to successfully upgrade/replace the old service as they'd like to, saying, please note until September 1st, the current online services are fully available. So basically what's happened here, the studio's seen this, they don't like it, they're going to do something about it. And I think with Anno, that is a game franchise where, I mean, I'm not going to say it's just like some of those old games that a lot of us would have liked back in the day, like Caesar or Pharaoh, but it's the sort of game that, you know, people play. And I know there's the latest and greatest Anno, but it's not like it's a new Anno that replaces the old one. If people like the theme of 2070, then maybe they just want to play 2070 instead, actually. So pretty interesting. And like, it is a sort of a different type of game to Anno 1800 or some of the more classic Anno games too. So they understood that like this would kind of screw over a bunch of their fans. And I think with a game like Anno, it's not a $1 billion franchise, right? So you've got to treat your fans well. And that's definitely one of the good things with niches.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that obviously mains do a whole lot of stuff and Ubisoft kind of blended a lot of the studios together, but looking at their site, it looks like they have support work on Siege, or a lot of work on Siege, as well as work on Beyond Good and Evil 2. So I'm actually surprised that Ubisoft are letting this happen. Yeah. Because you'd imagine, you know, you would, even if it's a small amount of resources, you would have the studio head say, hey, hello, Eves or Mr. Gimmo, whatever they say. Hello, we would like to devote a couple of resources to make sure that your decision to turn off all these servers doesn't actually impact our fans. You'd expect them to go, you want out of the Beyond Good and Evil 2 mines, even though you don't seem to be making any progress that we can show publicly? No, you're not allowed. But they do seem to actually, you know, I mean, maybe, I'm assuming they don't get to make this announcement without clearing it somewhere. So it is interesting that Ubisoft kind of actually, they must implicitly support this to some degree, which I think is cool, which I think is kind of cool.
I suppose it's the sort of thing where maybe that's just whatever way it works with autonomy in that studio, they've been able to make the case for it.
Maybe, yeah.
Whereas I suppose some of the other games, like maybe they're more mass market, they don't depend on niche. Maybe the usage, I mean, who's playing Far Cry 3 with online services?
Probably with 5 people, 10 people, but...
So, you know, I think some of that does make sense.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Ubisoft have messed up in this regard recently. Like, there was the whole thing with Heroes of Might and Magic. Right?
Yes.
This happened actually this time last year. Well, June. So they basically closed the servers for a bunch of games, of course, including DLC as well. But they accidentally caused issues for Heroes of Might and Magic 10 Legacy, which then had been delisted from stores while the problems were fixed, and they ended up putting it back in stores October 2021. So it's just a bit of a sloppy, kind of sloppy job. Now, there is like another side to this, which is some of the lessons we've seen from the MMO space and some other ones where game projects can be kept alive a little bit more.
Yeah, and this is the thing where this stuff absolutely needs to be considered from the beginning, even though it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult for developers to introduce. It's like, if you're taking the long-term approach, you got to do this stuff.
Yeah, so there would be something nice if this could be worked out. Now, we're not saying that an MMO should launch and, like, you should be able to run private servers, because that completely... I mean, that's a great way to make it not a viable genre anymore. Who's going to spend the many dozens, tens, in some cases, I believe it's been hundreds of millions, developing an MMO just to sell you the box price and then make no recurring revenue, right? So we're not saying private servers from the get-go, but at least some sort of plan to allow that to happen. Now, there have been some great stories in the MMO space that we've mentioned recently. Warhammer Online, of course, is one of them, where there's a great fan server project there that has not been shut down, which is really cool. Toontown Online, also City of Heroes. Those are all pretty high-profile examples of games where private servers have actually came in and essentially saved the situation, right? So it's the kind of thing where some sort of consideration for how we could have a handover, I guess, to fans would be kind of nice.
Yeah, in the same way that, like, I guess, the same way that Steam has a DRM-free kill switch that they talked about before, where it's like, oh yeah, sorry, we can't keep these servers up, which means your games are unplayable. We'll make sure that never happens. I feel like that should be like in part of some, if there's a Hippocratic oath for game developers, it should be like, we will make sure that there is a way out of our servers not working or something along those lines. Because imagine the publicity that EA would get, as an example, if North Star or I can't remember its name, the Battlefront 2 version of just, hey, here's all of the features and stuff repaired and rebuilt by fans, hosted by fans, solving problems that EA won't give their devs time to fix. Imagine the positive PR if that was like a decision they made as opposed to some shit they had to do.
Like, so North Star, just to get people up to speed, that's Titanfall 2.
That's Titanfall 2, yes.
Yeah, and like North Star is better. Like, it's not just, hey, we fix things up. It's, hey, we fixing things up and features and fixes and stuff.
Yeah, because the problem was that Titanfall 2, people could... Basically, you could only play on EA servers, Respawn servers, and they were destroyed by hackers, loads of bugs, stuff like that, just over time from degradation and people getting kind of craftier and just stuff not working. Then people reverse engineered how servers work, built their own solution so you can have your Titanfall 2 client go to custom servers in the same way a lot of these fan servers work. And that was like a lot of work from the developers, and that gives them like full potential to go, okay, well, here's modding tools for these servers, here's custom options, here's all of the stuff that you say people used to be able to do on like custom TF2 servers and CS servers and Half-Life servers. Here's that revived, even though today it's not really in the developer's interest to give you any of that. They actually fans did it themselves, and if that was a thing that was on purpose, that'd be great. But it's, I guess, the thing of you kind of want to go, hey fans, we can't financially make this work, and we're probably going to gain financially from it a little bit, but could you do it for us? In the same way that no one really complains about Skyrim mods doing a lot of Bethesda's work for them. People kind of, when asked, people say it feels a bit weird, but the prevailing opinion is modders go and have fun and it's good for everybody.
I was like, the modders want to do it. They know what the deal is.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I mean, yeah, it's like you can make those arguments, but they don't really seem to be problems that people are talking about. That's why I think like any argument for modding where a modder can be compensated for the work that they're doing, I think arguments that are rooted in this is Bethesda exploitation, I think those are significantly weaker than the arguments that are more along the lines of, what if these modders could quit their jobs and become a development, like basically a game development studio, but one that makes Skyrim DLC that's massive?
Yeah,
like, that's a stronger argument than the Bethesda are exploiting fan labor, even though you kind of could make that argument, but because it's completely consensual at all parts and nobody's complaining about it, it's not really much of an issue.
Yeah.
And it's time freely given by the modders. Yeah.
And also, obviously, there's paths to actual employment just working for the studio, like what happened to Fallout London.
Yeah,
where
multiple of the team, I believe.
Yeah, that project had substantial setbacks because of Bethesda, but it was literally because they're like, hey, do you want to come work on the next games of this? And they're like, hell yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that, absolutely. So it's that idea. The other thing that I'm thinking about here is RPCS3, right? Because Sony was in the news recently because of a patent that Game Rant spotted and posted the picture of but didn't link to, because I guess that's how Game Rant works these days. Just no one actually allowed to look at the patent, but it was about actual PS3 emulation and them hiring a classic games engineer. So people are thinking, oh, they actually are giving PS3 emulation a stab, like was rumored, on the PS5 for backwards compatibility. And I'm just sat here thinking, RPCS3 is coming along really, really well. So why not just get in touch with those people and say, hey, can we use your code? I mean, obviously the problem is then that's open source and they would be basically buying it and locking it off if they were to do that. But it's like, why not lean on fans doing the work that you don't have the resources to do? Because obviously there's a difference between resources and raw money. So it's like, oh, we can't find engineers to do this, whatever. I'll just pay you to do it because you're doing it anyway. That's the kind of thing I would love to see that happen. I hope something like that does happen, but in this case, it's Ubisoft just kind of going, yeah. And it's like, they say it's resources. I imagine it's the same way that Sony had to cut their old PSN stuff down because it was clearly causing problems, and it clearly wasn't getting the maintenance it required and needed rebuilt because it was built in a rush, seemingly by a load of people underpaid and overworked in Japan back in the day. The whole story of PSN's startup is interesting, but it just seems like it's the same deal here, especially when you look at what the Anno devs say about, saying they can't guarantee they'll be able to replace the old services because it is aged online services infrastructure. So it is a kind of thing where it's probably a substantial amount of work, but should, for the fans, right? For the players, you want to build long-term relationships with people. The stuff you kind of have to do.
Yeah,
not just
so it's
not just buy DLC.
It's interesting because it's one of those things where I think like your Ubisoft, you're looking at the numbers, you probably see the usage is almost certainly tiny.
Yeah.
So I think to a lot of decision makers at Ubisoft, they kind of look at the discourse that comes forth from this and they think, are you just trying to get clicks? We have the numbers. No one's playing these. No one will know really that this is going to happen. But I think for a lot of people, it's significantly more. It's more the principle, I suppose. It's the principle and an ongoing desire that, like, I guess, it's not that like, oh, I play. I think it's Brotherhood. Isn't Assassin's Creed Brotherhood that had the decently innovative multiplayer that like a lot of. I think it was Brotherhood that added that. Not exactly sure. It was the one where you're going around assassinating people and stuff. It's less that something people play. I think it's more the idea, though, that you could kind of reminisce with a friend about, like, oh, do you remember playing that? Actually, want to hop in Discord and play that? That might be fun. That might be a throwback. And I think it's just oh, you can't anymore. That thing is dead now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, right, you can't really relive the thing you did when you were a kid. And then that just makes you sad.
It's a little bit like a digital equivalent of, like, I guess, if we're going to go really old, like the disco your parents used to, go to on a Saturday night is closed, or the cinema they used to go to is closed, like actually happened here fairly recently. It's like the cinema we used to go to all the time is now been knocked down. And you're like, that's kind of sad. It's like a digital version of that, where some of it's like kind of nostalgic. Well, clearly it wasn't making money, so it wasn't going to stay up. So it's just kind of wistful thinking about the past. But in the digital realm, I guess there's a lot more of like, obfuscation of what it takes to keep it open, keep it running. And then you see all the other cases of like, oh, well, these people can get their nostalgic thing kept alive. Why can't we? Is it not? Well, I guess is the whole point of, they're in the business to make money, not to make games, and not to make, old gamers feel nostalgic and happy about their times. It's like, I think, would it really cost that much? You're $1 billion company. Would it cost any more than, like, say, half a year of a half-decent engineer's salary to keep it going? But then it's opportunity costs and stuff, and then you get into that whole thing of it costs that, it costs more than that engineer's salary because that engineer could be building tech for their next big game or something. And then you get in this pit of just, why can't it be nice? Why can't we just live in an ideal society? Basically.
Yeah. So there you go. I suppose core takeaway. Kind of sad this stuff happens.
Good on Ubisoft mains.
Good on the Anno developers for keeping that thing alive.
Hell yeah.
Hopefully it sets a nice precedent. So that's it for us today. Well, of course, check in with you tomorrow again with some more hot spicy news. Till then, see you later.